and welcome to the True You Ministries podcast. I'm Stacy Echeverria, your host, and today I have very special guest Debbie Simmons. Welcome to the show, Debbie.
Hi, I'm glad to be here with you guys.
Yeah, and before we get into the topic that we have planned to bring to you today, let me share a little bit with our audience about you. So, Debbie Simmons is the legacy architect, designing legacies worth living and leaving. A CEO, author, and adoptive mom of 9,
Mhm.
Debbie's calling was forged in the fire of loss. After losing her quadruplets, she chose to trust God with the next best step, transforming grief into a fearless pursuit of kingdom impact. She is the founder and CEO of Anchor Point, a multi division nonprofit equipping families to heal, grow, and thrive. As the legacy architect, Debbie equips faith driven leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs to design businesses and ministries aligned with their God given calling, blueprints that create lasting impact and outlive them. As the author of The Heart of Legacy, Living a Focused, Faithful, and Fearless Life, and a sought after voice on trauma informed leadership and resilient faith, Debbie speaks with authority born of both heartbreak and hard won victory. Her message is bold and clear. When you lead from the heart and follow Jesus, even your hardest days can fuel your greatest legacy. And I know, Debbie, you and I spoke previously, and you have quite the story. So, again, welcome to the show. And I look forward to hearing a little bit more about your story as you share with our audience. So, let's get to it. So, tell us how your journey began. What was the pivotal moment when you realized your mission is to help build legacy in business, family, and faith?
Mhm. Well, first of all, I tell you, it's always an exciting ride. So it's like buckle up. There's some highs and there's lows in all of our journeys. And for me, I became a Christian at a very young age when I was
Mhm.
in like fifth or sixth grade.
Mhm.
And my parents were baby believers at best. And so they kind of just dropped us off and everything. So my faith was something that I just kind of learned to walk on my own. And
Mm.
somewhere in there, I got this wild idea that I would love to be a young grandma. Okay. And I'm a girl that gets things done. And so I knew I had to find a guy, fall in love, get married, have children, and then I could be young grandma. And so
Mhm.
went to college, found the guy, fell in love, got married, check, check, check. I'm on my track, right? And then we ran into infertility. And that was a place where it began to really test, like, who am I? And
Mm.
why can't I do these things? And my identity as a person and my
Yeah.
worth and all these things. And we did, after about 5 years, get pregnant. And when we got
Mm.
pregnant, we were originally diagnosed with twins. And then
Mm.
around 13 weeks, I started bleeding. And
Oh,
I thought,
no.
oh my gosh, I. I'm not going to make it. I'm going to lose these babies. And
Mhm.
I've almost to the second semester, trimester. We ended up at the doctor, and I wasn't pregnant with twins. I was actually pregnant with quads.
Wow.
And, if you thought you could handle two, well, when you get four that day, it's like, well, wow, everything's like changed.
Yeah.
And I just remember I was like, okay, God, I want lots of children and I want lots of grandchildren. I want to be a young
Mm.
grandma. Let's do them all, And four babies means lots of grandbabies, right? And
Right.
so off we go on this journey, and we recognize that every day it was pretty amazing to make it to the next day when you have a high risk pregnancy.
Yeah.
And we just started kind of walking it out. And at 20, our goal was to get to 30 weeks. And
Mhm.
at 26 weeks, I found myself kind of standing in water, and I was like, what's that?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it turned out to be that one of the baby's sacs had ruptured. So they put me in the
Oh.
hospital. And the next morning, contractions came crashing in, and one of the babies had stuck his hand through my stitched cervix and was waving to the world, I'm
No.
coming. And I'm looking at the doctor going, it's too early. Stop
Mhm.
this. Put the hand
Mhm.
back. Let's forget it ever happened. And the doctor is shaking her head. No. And I am like, I don't know how to even figure my way, right? And so I'm sitting there, and my husband says, we have to deliver the baby. And she says, yes. And we know at that point that potentially they're not going to make it because technology is not there as it is today, and their lungs aren't developed enough. And he goes, well, what about the other three? And she said, we'll have to see what Debbie's body does. And so they took me off into surgery to remove the stitches, put me back in the room. And next thing I know, little Zach arrives on the scene, and they place him in my arms, and I held him and I rocked him and I loved him until he drifted off into
Mm,
eternity. And then we sat there,
mm,
waiting with,
mhm,
empty arms, and didn't really know what was going to happen next. And it's like everything just stood still, right? And
mhm,
a few hours went by. The doctor walked back in the room and said, your blood work is a mess, and
mhm.
you've got 103, 104 fever, you're getting sicker, you're going to have to induce the rest of them.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
are- and I just looked up to her like, is there any other way? And
Mm,
she was shook her head no again. And
mm,
I closed my eyes, breathed, and just resolved to figure my way through. And several hours later, Josh, Nate, and Chris each came onto the scene individually, and
mm.
I placed them in my arms, and I rocked them, and I held them, and I loved them until they drifted into eternity. And there
Oh,
we sat, empty
yeah,
hands and
yeah.
broken hearts.
Wow.
And that is the moment that I learned that everything changed. It's like eternity
Mm,
took a whole different went to a whole different level then, right?
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
had been a Christian for a long time, but it was like eternity matters.
yeah. It
This
does.
matters. And
Yeah.
I don't want to I I still want to be a young grandma. I don't know how that's going to work out. But, I'm like, okay, God, I don't know how to figure my way through this.
Yeah.
And I have to figure my way through this. And the number one question that you and I ask when we're in difficult situations is often why? Why
Mhm.
me? Why God? Why now? Why my
Yeah,
boys? And that was me. I'm like, and if I could
yeah.
just get the answer to why, everything would be okay. And the
Mm,
truth is that if God himself would have stood in front of me in that hospital room and told me the answer for why,
mhm.
I guarantee you my next thing out of my mouth would have been, why? Right? Because
Right,
why is a stuck question, and you never, ever this side of heaven get a satisfactory answer.
right,
There's nothing that would bring my
right.
boys back, justify the pain, all this good stuff, even if it was God
Yeah,
himself, right? And so God
yeah,
just gently kept pushing on me, going, give me the why. And I'm like, no, it's all I got left. This is all I have
yeah,
left. And you want me to
yeah.
give it to you. And he's like, give it to me.
Mm,
And I finally was like, fine, I'll give it to you. But I don't
mm,
I don't know how to figure my way. I don't know how to work through this. And
yeah,
he's like, "And ask me another question." And I'm
yeah.
like, "Okay, what?" How
And
do you
and
figure your way through
yeah,
this?
yeah, and
And
even how,
yes,
what, and
well,
how.
and
Yeah,
the question he told me to ask was, "Ask me, how do I survive?"
yeah,
And it turned out to be I needed to breathe and to take the next
yeah,
best step.
yeah.
And then as I worked through healing in that, I would do whatever I thought the next best step was with guidance and prayer and whatever else. And I'd do that, and God would meet me. And then he'd shine the light at my feet, and he would show me the next step, and I would do it. And that's the healing journey. And at some point, I got better, right? And then
Mm,
the question I moved to, which is really the legacy question, is I was like, okay, God, I don't want to be 30 years down the road and still feeling the same things, like
mm,
sad and stuck and all this stuff. I want to live, and I want to have joy, and I want to
mhm,
smile and all
yeah,
these things. And I said, you say you're a God that redeems stories. And I said, how do I thrive? How do I
right,
thrive in this?
right.
And that's when he began to open up amazing doors to work with people who have lost children, to lead grief
Mm,
groups, to adopt the
mhm,
children that we have,
mhm,
to start the ministry, to write the book. And all of
mhm.
that came out of that pain of losing the boys. And that is how their legacy lives on today and gives me this great opportunity to love and invest in people to
Mhm.
help them learn to live their legacies. And so that's where
Right.
this
Yeah.
intentionality came, was in the middle of all of that, just realizing that I wanted my life to matter. And
Mhm.
I knew that I needed to be very intentional, because I believe we'll all leave a legacy,
Yeah.
but will we leave what we want to leave? So we have to actually live our legacies now so that we
Correct.
can leave them later, right? And so
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how I
Yeah.
landed where I am today.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and thank you so much for sharing your story. As I listen to it, and, that question that we all ask is, "Why, Lord, why?
mhm,
Why me?" And in hearing part of your story, I imagine that the Lord has been answering that question in what you're doing and how you're helping others, walk through similar losses that they're experiencing. And, the legacy. And I talk about legacy quite a bit with my clients as well, especially if
mhm,
they're married and they have children, and I help them put into perspective, their own healing process. And that is painful. That process is painful. But I said, but when you come through it, you are leaving a different legacy for your kids and your kids' kids and generations to come than what you ended up with. So you get to make that decision as to what kind of legacy, do you want to leave behind, because that is what we're going to be remembered for, who we were, what we did, how we impacted or didn't impact. And so legacy is really important. So it's really, I love that you call you the legacy architect. I love that because you have to build it. It has
mhm,
to be built.
mhm,
And so let's get into that. I know that there's a framework, right? Focused, faithful, and fearless. So how did you
mhm.
come to adopt that framework, and how has it shaped your life and work?
Well, it's interesting. That was a very hard thing to land on when I was in the process of writing the book, and I was just like, what is it that people would say about me? What are the
Mhm,
words that they would use?
mhm,
And
mhm,
so ultimately, after quizzing everybody I know, these were the three words that they go,
mhm,
that's you.
mhm. Wow.
That's what you do. I was like, okay, I get it. And they will tell you I am very focused, and I'm
Yeah.
like, if I'm on a goal, I'm like, how do we get there? And let's get there. And if I am very, faithful, whether it's trusting God,
Mhm,
walking out relationships, or
mhm.
trying to live out this Christian faith,
Yeah.
the way God's called us to, is relationships are difficult. So it's not
Yeah.
always easy, and venturing into hard things with people.
Mm.
My staff will tell you that I don't let us go home. I'm like, stay at the office. I'll be there in a little bit. We're going to talk through this, because it's the relationship is important. It's more
Yeah.
important than the work we're doing. And
Right.
fearless is this idea of being willing to say yes to God without even knowing the question, right? It took me
Yeah.
a long time to get there, but I am much better at that now. And people just go, "You're like crazy," and I'm like, "No, it's not crazy to do what God calls you to do."
Right.
To the world, it seems like it, and
Right.
here's a funny story on that, is when we were adopting the first time, my parents, who I told you kind of are baby Christians at best, they, had in mind one boy, one girl. And I'm like, I want lots of kids. And so we were looking at all these, and my dad's like, you're crazy. And so we ended up in our
Mhm.
first adoption with five children. Okay, a
Oh,
sibling
wow.
group.
Right.
And they're wonderful. And my parents fell in love with them and did all this stuff. Well, then we felt God about 8 years later calling us to adopt again. And my parents were like, "No, you're crazy." They wouldn't even give me a reference. And I'm like,
Oh.
"I'm not a bad mom. I'm a good mom." And they're like, "You're crazy." My pastor at the time told us we were crazy. And I'm like, "You're my pastor. If I tell
Yeah.
you God's leading me here, you should be supportive." I'm like, "What is
Yeah,
wrong with
yeah.
you people?" And so
Right.
we adopted the second time, and we ended up with 2 more, a sibling group of 2. And then about 3 years later, I knew that God wanted us to turn our application in. I didn't know if it was because I had a daughter that had a child that was probably going to end up in CPS custody, or if there
Mm,
was something new to learn, or if we
mhm,
were supposed to adopt. So neither one of us
mhm.
were going, "Yeah, let's adopt. We want more." Woohoo. But we were obedient to put the application in. Do you know that I didn't even bother telling my parents?
Right.
They wouldn't be my reference on the last one. Now they're super supportive, but I'm like, they wouldn't even be my reference. And so I was
Yeah.
like, I just did it without even saying anything. And when the kids are fixing to move in the house, like the week before, I call my parents and I tell them, and my mom's like, "That's just like you." But, and they love all of my children.
Love
So
it.
they're great grandparents. But I'm like,
Yeah.
it seems like it's this huge thing, but it's actually when you're in the center of when you're in the center of what you believe God's called you to do, that's
Yeah.
actually the safest place, even if
Right.
it's the most hostile
Mm.
place to be. And so I go, is it really fearless or am I just a big truster?
Or both. It could be
Yeah,
both, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Absolutely. Yeah,
so
yeah, amazing.
that's how those kinda came about, and I
Yeah.
find those to be true. If we can live that way, if
Mm.
we can kind of pull these things and live that way, then it's it's amazing the things that God can do with our lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know that's just incredible. Again, the whys keep getting answered in the story the more that we hear the story, right? And I love it. It's like, your pastor thought you were crazy, your parents thought you were crazy, and it's like, well, when Noah was told to build the ark, they all
Yeah,
thought he was crazy too.
yes, and it was a lot of years too. It wasn't just like 10 days or something. It was like
Exactly.
decades, and I'm like,
Yeah,
but
e
now
exactly.
we will tell you that my husband and I have laid in bed at night and gone, God, if you are not real, we
Yeah,
are completely crazy. So we know that outside of God, this
yeah,
really is crazy
it is.
to walk out your Christian faith the way we need to
Right.
do it.
Right,
Mhm.
absolutely. So thank you so much for sharing that. So let's now move into the kingdom mindset in business. And so for our audience to hear a little bit more about how you implement all of this and how you help, entrepreneurs. So how do you integrate number 1, faith with business strategy? And can you share a story where trusting God changed a business decision or outcome?
Sure. Yeah. Now, I will tell you, trusting God is what got anchor point totally. Because I was like, I am not in. Because starting a nonprofit, it was not on my list of things to do.
Sure.
I'm an engineer by training. I'm a
Oh,
mechanical engineer.
yeah.
And going to seminary wasn't on my list,
Mm,
and art in ministry was not on my list.
mm,
And I did all those things. And
yeah.
so I
Yeah.
would say, when uh, that is like starting something from scratch. And so,
Mhm.
when God has uniquely, He wants to take our pain and turn it into purpose, and He wants to take us and use us uniquely. So, the question for you and me is, what is my unique gifting? What makes me laugh? What makes me cry? And the
Mm,
things that make me cry in this world are the things that I'm probably supposed to help bring answer to.
right,
And so
right.
when you and I step back from our fast-paced world and begin to think, eternally,
Mhm.
about like this this isn't all there is. This is the journey. And so we have a
Right.
chance to make impact. And when
Mhm.
we are brave enough to sit back and go, okay, God, how is it that you want to uniquely use me? And
Right.
that might be a business, it might be joining a business, it could be all kinds of different things. But what I find is that most of us, a lot of times, come to Jesus and fall in love with Jesus because of what he can do for me.
Right.
And the reality is that Jesus loves us to restore us into relationship with the Father
Mhm.
and to live out what brings glory to the Father. That
Yeah.
might not be very
Yeah.
convenient for me.
Right.
And there's so many stories in the Bible that that is the case, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I can think of one gentleman that I do coaching with, and he leads an organization where, his choosing to be obedient to God does not look like success in the world.
Right.
It has
Right.
it has radically changed their organization in a good way, but
Mm.
it's created difficulty and chaos. And when you run into difficulty and chaos, a lot of times you can say, that's not God. That I'm
Oh,
it's not supposed to
right.
be like this, and it's supposed to
Right.
be this. And I'm like,
Right.
no, you have to change your perspective. You're
Right.
looking at this all wrong. And I
Mm.
remember asking him, this has been about a 3 or 4 year journey, and I believe he is beginning to be fearless and going where God's calling him to go. And it's going to be a wonderful next level. I can see that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for him, he's kind of stuck in the middle of it and trying to figure his way. And he's going to make it, he's going to get there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to let go of
Mhm.
some of those things. But I
Yeah.
asked him the other day, I was like, you know, do you wish you could go back and you never changed any of this? And his answer was, it's really hard,
Mhm.
but the person that I'm becoming is way,
Yeah.
way better.
Wow.
And even if it stopped right here, I am a better. And
Wow.
that's what it's really about,
Yeah.
right? Is us
Yeah.
becoming the people that
Yeah.
God needs us to be. And He's a better father. He's a
Yeah.
better leader. And He's identified a lot of the hangups that were internally in Him,
Mhm.
truths that He had believed
Mm.
are actually lies
Yeah.
that He needs to let go of. And
Right.
that process is messy, and
It is.
it definitely doesn't always look like success in our world.
Mhm. No.
And so
No.
for him, it's a wonderful journey. And, like if you asked me a year after losing the boys, is this great?
Yeah.
I'm like going to be going, not exactly. I'm
Yeah.
32 years removed from that. And I've
Right.
told my story tons and tons of time. And I can go, it's worth it.
Yeah.
And that's the value
Um,
I can bring to someone like that, is to go, no, you can do this, you can build this, you can become who God's
yeah.
calling you to be.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
for him, in the middle of it, the fact that he can see that he personally is in a better space and that God's going to
Mhm.
take care of him, that is more powerful than anything.
Yeah, amen. Amen. Thank you for sharing that. There's so many different things that you highlighted in that story that resonates for me in the work that I do with my clients. And that is, helping them identify what are the gifts and talents that the Lord has given you. And then how does he want you to invest those gifts and those talents, right? And then also, what are the people groups that he's put on your heart? Who do you connect with? Who do you
Yeah.
have, that sympathy for, or you're drawn to? Some it's the elderly, others it would be teenagers, others it would be, women that have experienced abuse, different things. And then another part of the counseling that I do is, all right, so you have to give to grow. We can't be selfish with what the Lord has given us, right? And so he, because we're part of the body and we all have a function and we
Mhm.
all have a purpose. And so if we don't know what our purpose is, if we don't know what gifts and talents he's given us, we will be floundering. And so thank goodness for people like you who can help individuals, figure that out. So that brings me to the next question that I have for you with regard to, and it's something that I've struggled with, and like I worked in the entertainment industry for 14 years and I saw what was going on there, and I've never been someone that chases money. I look at success for me in my life. I look at success in this way. Am I walking out the calling that the Lord has given me? Yes. I'm successful. That's it. It's really that simple for me. Am I doing what he has called me to? Am I following him? Am I obedient to him? Am I saying yes to the things that he's asked me to say yes to? Even when I'm going, I have no idea. I don't know that I want to do that, but I'm at a point in my life where I'm going, okay, Lord, if you want me to do that, I'll step into it, but you know that I really don't want to do this, but I will say, yes, send me, right?
Mhm.
Because I know what my life was like before I came to know the Lord, and I was doing it in my own strength. And when I surrendered to Him, mind you, that was not an overnight thing. But once we surrender to the Lord and, wanting his will for our life becomes much simpler for us. But I wanted to ask you the question. I know that you work with Christian entrepreneurs. So many Christian entrepreneurs struggle with balancing profitability and purpose. And I know that, the Lord is very well aware of the fact that practically we do need money in order to pay our bills and, do other things. So what advice do you give for aligning revenue goals with kingdom values?
Sure, that's a great question. And, the same thing applies to, like the work that we do in the nonprofit, right? Our um, budget is generally about 1.5 million a
Mm.
year, 2 million that we're raising to have
Mhm.
kingdom impact, right? And the
Okay.
question is, do we raise more money to make more impact, right? And you can get in
Right,
the same kind of thing. So
right.
I would tell you, first of all, the number one thing that we have to decide is that we perform for an audience, but we have an
Mhm.
audience of one.
Of one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And
Mhm.
I don't remember where I learned that, but I do
Mhm.
know
Mhm.
that in everything that I do, that's what I'm going to look for. Okay.
Mm.
Success is not money, it's obedience.
Right.
Okay. If you look at example after example after example in the Bible, when
Mhm.
Jesus went to the cross, he didn't have big crowds. He
Right.
wasn't a big pastor of a big church. He
Right.
had very little crowds and he
Right.
had a humiliating death.
Yes.
And yet he was in the center of God's will and he was doing exactly. You take Paul, Paul was a very successful, and then he has this conversion experience. And what happens to Paul? He goes to the first city, they beat him to death. He goes to the second one, they beat him. He goes to the third one, he beat him. He's on his way to Rome to because that's where God's sending him, and God's told him
Mhm.
that. And where does he end up? He ends up in a
Mhm.
hurricane,
Right.
whatever, for 15 some days. They end up shipwrecked. He gets bit by a snake. They think he's a demon kind of person. And then, and I'm going, I'm pretty sure if I had to list all these things out, it does not look like success in the
Yeah.
world's eyes. Okay.
Yeah.
Then when he gets to Rome and it's like the pinnacle of success, he does get to talk, but he lives as a prisoner.
Right.
All of
Right.
us would not
Yeah.
go, sign me up. I'm in for that. No, I'm like, no, I don't think we understand
Yeah.
what God may call us to. But if we
Right.
understand that our calling is to fall more in love with Him and to
Mhm.
please the Father and to bring
Mhm.
glory to Him, then
Mhm.
all the things that we've been taught and learned in the world,
Yeah.
they're hard to fight against.
Right.
And when you see people like I, I watch people that, get on YouTube one time and do one thing and they're like this instantaneous success. And I'm like
I
going,
know.
God, I'm in the middle of what you told me to do. And like, I got two followers. What is going on? Am I doing
I
the right
know.
thing? And I'm
I
like, I'm
know.
going to keep
Mm.
talking.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
so we can look at those things and get distracted, or
Right.
we can like put the blinders up and stay focused. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's never a problem to make money. And
No.
there are people that God has gifted to make money. The
Right.
question is, when we make money,
Mhm.
what do we do with it? And what
Right.
is the purpose behind it? And what
Right.
heart does it bring out? Some of my biggest blessings in ministry have been people who have the gift of making money that
Mhm.
invest in the ministry with us.
Right.
And, we could not do what we do without them buying
Right.
in and partnering with us. And so I go, when you get money, what do you
Mhm.
do with it?
Mm.
Is your purpose? What is your kingdom impact? How do you
Yeah.
invest it back wisely and stuff like that?
Right. Right.
Nowhere nowhere in the Bible does it talk about retirement accounts and stuff like
No.
that, other than building a retirement account and have it.
Amen.
And so I think for us, we can have all these goals. You should have goals, you should work to them and everything
Mhm.
like that. But if we lose our ability to keep our eye on God and keep him the
Mhm.
center focus of
Mhm.
everything we're doing, then
Mhm.
we're going to get off. And is it a
Yeah.
problem to have a nice car? No. I
Mhm.
rode in a Tesla yesterday going to the airport. I was like, that's
Mhm.
really nice. I'll never have a Tesla because I'm too scared to wreck it. And I
Yeah.
don't want to pay that much money for it.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but I'm going, I know very gracious people who have Teslas, but
Yeah.
they outgive
Yeah.
and their
Yeah.
hearts are so overflowing. So it
Yeah.
really is about perspective. And the two
Yeah.
words that God has just beat into me over the years is humility and submission.
Amen.
And
Yeah.
if I'm doing
Yeah.
those right,
Yeah.
then he's going to work it all out. And this is
Yeah.
where, if let's say we're on the other side and we're not
Mhm.
having the
Mhm.
money that we would like to see and we're
Mhm.
struggling and stuff like that, this is a wonderful time to
Mhm.
learn how to trust God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Right.
here's how I do it. And people go, you just got childlike faith. I just go, some big issue comes up and I go, okay, God, you're my daddy and you take care of everything. I don't have a clue how to deal with this. So I'm
Right.
going to give it to you and
Mhm.
you teach me.
Right.
And I'm not
Right.
going to sit, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to freak out over it. I'm going to lay down the why very early and I'm going to go, this is no surprise to you. You
Right.
know, I have to pay this bill. You know, I have to do this. You know, I have this staff thing, whatever it is. And I'm going to go, you're going to have to show me how to do it. Most people wouldn't say that's a super like smart CEO, but I go, I'm trusting in God, and it's not that I'm not doing my due diligence and all that good stuff, but I'm going, my first turn is, okay, God, you have to show me how to do this because I don't have
Yeah.
a clue.
Right. Right.
You know,
Right. Yeah, and
mm,
I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. I ask the Lord daily, tell me if there's anything that you want me to do differently. Is there anything that you want me to let go of? Do you want me to take something else on? So I consider him my CEO, and I couldn't be happier because,
yeah,
I've worked for other people. I've worked for other companies where there's a CEO, I'll be honest with you, I don't like working for other people. I love working for the Lord. Because I know that he's always going to have my best interests at heart. And
mm,
he's not going to do me wrong. He's not going to hurt me. He's not going to betray me, right? I can trust him completely in whatever ways he wants me to go. I will go. So, yeah. And the thing too, this is something that my husband and I have spoken about with regard to money when people come into wealth. And we think about some of these athletes that have these multi-million dollar contracts where they've come from very humble beginnings, right? And the thing of it is, you hear about them being broke, and I'm going, they had enough money for generations to come to be able to have enough money for legacy, if you will. And the thing is, what my husband said was, money magnifies what's already there,
mm, yeah.
right? It
Mhm.
does. And there's that scripture that people always get twisted around, and I'll tell them, "Well, you're missing the first part of it." Because people will say, "Well, money's the root of all evil." And I'm like, "That's not the scripture. It's the love of money." So what are we pursuing? So,
Mhm.
for me, in my own practice that the Lord and I have been building for the last 5 years, no, am I making tons of money? No, I'm not. But here's the thing. There's always money available when I need it.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's like, so what are the things that we are pursuing and what's important? So
Mhm.
as we start to wrap up, I'd like in this first segment, because we're going to have a part two, I want to talk a little bit about legacy and influence. So when you talk about building legacy, right, what does
Mhm.
that mean in a daily practical sense, especially for people who feel stuck or overwhelmed?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And here's what I would say. When I think about like living your legacy now,
Hmm.
okay, it is really about being intentional. And if you are a person that is stuck or overwhelmed, the question is, how do I work my way through that? Right. And
Hmm.
it's about being intentional. And it is really learning to ask that question, how do I survive? And letting God kind
Yeah,
of guide you. But I go down to this concept of what's the next best step I can do?
I like it.
Because the reality is you and I, if we're looking back, then we pick up, shame and regret and all stuff, and
Right.
that starts weighing us down. If we
Hmm.
look too far the other way to the future, we pick up anxiety, stress,
Right.
worry, and everything. The only thing that we have the ability to influence is right now, is
Right.
this second. And so, what is the next thing I could do? And I would tell you, after we lost the boys, it's not like about huge steps. It's about a step, okay? Because
Right.
like after I lost the boys, literally there were days where, you know what, my next best step was to pull the covers off of my head, go brush my teeth,
Mm,
and walk around for a few minutes and then get back in the bed because
right,
that's all I could do that day. But it
right.
was positive. And
Mm,
so for all of us, we need to be taking positive steps each and every day. Now, does that mean we always go forward? No, we might go a few
mhm,
back, but we're
mhm.
always trying to figure out what the next best one is. Not the
Yeah,
next right one, because the right word will cause us to get stuck too, because we're going,
exactly.
I don't know if I was supposed to go that way or this way. But
Right.
movement, allowing God to direct us will change
Yes,
everything. And I would tell
yes.
you, this next best step concept I use all the time. A
Mhm,
couple of years ago, after COVID, we had an employee that we had to let go, and that
mhm.
it was very contentious. And we tried to do everything in her best interest and everything. I really tried to go above and beyond.
Yeah.
And at the very last point where she could file a lawsuit, she filed a lawsuit. So
Mhm.
I remember the day I got the information about the lawsuit, and the first question that came out of my mind, why this?
Why?
That, da, 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 da. And I went, oh my God, that's not going to get me anywhere good.
Oh,
I got to stop that. Okay, let me put that
yeah,
down. And then I'm
yeah.
like, okay, Daddy God, I trust
Yeah.
you, because this could, I mean, literally, if you think about it, it could wipe out the whole ministry,
Mhm,
could have a negative
mhm,
impact. It could just kill
mhm.
and I was just like,
Sure.
I have no idea how to get through
Yeah,
this. I
yeah,
have no, and so I just said, okay, God, you got to show me how to do this. But I'm like, how do I survive? And when
yeah,
I asked that question, and then I'm thinking of what the next best step might be, I'm like, okay, what should I do? And
yeah.
then I'm like, you know what? I should probably call the attorney. And I'm like,
Right.
that's a wonderful next step in
Yeah,
a lawsuit case, right?
exactly,
And I
exactly.
have to realize, this is the intentional part, okay? When I'm faced with this, it doesn't surprise God, so he's not
Mhm.
surprised.
Right.
So he wouldn't do anything that I'm not supposed to be able to figure my way through with love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness,
Right.
that self-control, which I felt like I had none of those at that moment. But the other thing I need to realize is that everyone is watching.
Yeah.
My children are watching, my
Mhm,
staff is watching, and not
mhm.
that's meant to put pressure on me. It's
Right,
meant to give me an opportunity to show them how to let Jesus shine even when it's hard. And,
right.
and in that situation, I have staff come to me and they go, we have this whole issue. And I'm like, okay, no worries. We got this. And they're like, well, what are
Yeah.
we going to do? And I'm like, I don't know, but God does. And
But
so, what's the next best step? And they're like, how's it going to all work out? I'm like, I don't know. but God's going to show us. And,
Yes.
and that is
Yeah.
learning to live by faith. And so I go,
Yeah.
that next best step is such a wonderful, easy concept to say, hey, this is what we need to do. And people who are stuck or overwhelmed generally are holding on to the why question.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
why is very internal, and it is Satan's trap to
Uh-huh.
to
Yeah.
pull us away, to get us away from people. And
Yeah.
that next best step is just such a good tool, at
Yeah.
least in my life for me.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So, one last question before we wrap up this particular segment. Want to pivot into family and relationships. So, you emphasize helping families move from surviving to thriving. So, what are some foundational habits or mindsets that help a family live out their God given design?
Yeah. Okay. So the number one thing, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, I can't remember where we were talking about it, but um, number one thing that is required, well, we want to keep God at the center of everything, but the number
Hmm.
one thing that we as adults must do is we cannot lead children where they need to go unless we have been there before them.
Right.
Meaning, if I have junk, I have to deal with my junk, right?
Yep.
And if I don't deal with
Yep.
my junk, then I
Hmm.
can't teach them how to deal with their junk. I can't walk alongside them and deal with their junk. Now,
Right.
how do I know if I have junk? Okay, it's very easy. Your kids are wonderful at finding all your junk. They'll just hit the button and you go, "What?" And you have this
Mm.
huge explosion out of you
Yeah. Yep.
over something that's
Yep.
really minor. And
Right.
so, if we can begin to understand, and this is the same thing for the kid has a very strong emotions over something. And they're just stuck. They don't know how to
Mhm.
get out of it. They don't know how to
Yeah.
process these strong emotions.
Right.
So, when we get lit up, when we run our therapeutic camps for families that have challenging children,
Mhm.
it's the parents that grow the
Yeah.
most.
Right.
But
Right.
one of the things that I teach them is I have this wonderful video of this walk down a wooded area, and it goes down to the beach. And we watch it twice. And the first time, the music is like da 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 da, and it's like so wonderful. And you get down to the beach, and it's so peaceful, and everything. And everybody goes, "I want to go on that journey," right? So we watch it again, and this time it's done with the theme of Jaws. And you're walking through, and it's like terror in the trees, and then you're getting down to the water, and you're fixing to be eaten. And so, what I like to teach parents is all that is when your kids light you up, you have found your shark waters. And
Yes.
it's like, dun, 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 they're going to kill me.
Yeah.
I got to kill them first. Right. And if you and I can just begin to understand where we start to feel that in our body, I feel it in my chest generally. It's
Mhm,
very tight.
mhm,
Then
mhm.
I can, before I flip into the lower part of my brain, which is my emotional part, I
Yep.
want to stay in the logical part. The way I stop myself from flipping is I go, oh, that's my shark waters.
Yeah.
And when I
Yeah.
say that, then I become a different person because
Yeah.
I'm still up here and I can
Mhm.
rationally think. When I'm down
Sure.
here, it's over, right?
It is.
It's
Yep.
over. And
Yep.
what happens is I lose it, the kid loses it, I lose it, the kid loses it. It's a mess, right? And
Yeah.
everybody gets hurt. And
Yeah.
so I need to be able to stop in the middle of a kid losing it and I still be able to be present. And the only way I
Right.
can do that is if I am extremely healthy.
Yep.
And so I have got to deal with my stuff because what I need to be, when that kid's losing it and they're cussing at me or they're whatever they're doing, it feels very personal.
Yeah, it
And
does.
God still says, I can have joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. And I'm like going, I don't feel none of that.
Mhm.
But if I am healthy, do
Yeah.
you know what? I can look in that kid's eyes with compassion and
Sure.
I can hear him say, I need you now more than ever, mom,
Mm.
even though I don't know how to tell you. And
Right.
I might be cussing, but that's what I can hear. Right. And when I can
Yeah.
hear that,
Yeah.
then I can stay in the space. When I can
Mhm.
stay in the space with that child and hold them as we learn to work through that, then
Mhm.
we can begin to change maladaptive behaviors
Yeah.
and change
Yeah.
destinies of children. Because,
Right.
I mean, I've had kids that have had things and thrown things, trash can or whatever around the
Yeah.
house, and I'm going,
Yeah.
"Dude, if we don't figure this out, how are you ever gonna work at Whataburger when they tell you to take the trash out
Rush
or
out.
clean the toilet? You're gonna throw it across the room." I'm going, "That's not gonna be success," And so
No.
this is, but I have to be healthy. God
Sure.
must have thought that I needed a lot of work on me because he gave me
Mhm.
9. And so I'm like, they're like, "Ding, ding," and I'm like,
Yep.
"Okay."
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've
No.
just practiced a lot, and when parents can do that and let God heal them, because God wants
Mhm.
us to heal us,
Mhm. Mhm.
allows us to be used with our kids, with
Yep.
other people, and to
Yep.
have bigger kingdom impact, and that is what he wants us to make us whole so that we
Yeah.
shine for him well.
Yeah, that's such a wonderful point. It's something that I talk to the parents about when I'm counseling them. And I'll say, "Look, you get to model health to your children,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Because they're sponges and they're looking at everything. And it's like, well, you cope in the ways that you do because that was the household you grew up in, then that's what your parents did. So you get the opportunity to change generations moving forward and breaking that cycle.
Yes.
And so they're doing the hard work now so that their kids can have a healthier future than they did.
Mhm.
And so it all starts with the parents too, right? What
Yep.
do I need to look at? What do I need to do in order to get healthy? So this has been wonderful. I know we've got great stuff coming up in part two. And so before we wrap up, what's the best way that people can get in touch with you if they, I don't know if you offer a free consultation, but how can people reach you?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me and to learn more about the coaching and the different things that I do is to go to my website, and that is thedebbiesimmons.com. And then for all of your listeners, I love when they're struggling, like, what's the next step for me? I
Mhm.
love to just give as a gift our book, The Heart of Legacy. And you can just go to theheartoflegacy.com and you can get it for free. And it is a
Yeah.
gift to bless you and to help you figure out your next step in kingdom calling, and that will guide you kind of to all the different social media and stuff like that with me.
Yeah, love that. I'll have that in the show links as well. In the show notes, excuse me. I'll have all your links in the show notes where people can get in touch with you. And I always like to ask the audience a question, and that is, do you know Jesus? Because we've been talking about kingdom legacy. And if you're not in the kingdom, and if you don't even know what your gifts and talents are, you need to know Jesus if you don't know him, because he'll show you what they are. He'll connect you also with people who are able to call it out and see it. I remember many years ago, it was called out in me that I have the prophetic gift. I had no idea. I just knew that there was things that I knew, didn't know how I knew them, and it was called out. So it's in relationship that we get to see that in relationship with the Lord, who cultivates that. Not everyone gets all of the gifts, right? We at least will get one. And if you don't know what your gifts are, if you don't know what your talents are, if you don't know what your purpose is, and you don't know Jesus, today's the day. I love talking to people about the Lord. So if there's any question about what do I need to do, it's really not that hard. Contact me. I do offer a free 20-minute consultation. You can schedule that from my website at trueyouministries.com, or you can email me at info@trueyouministries.com. Again, Debbie, thank you so much for being on the show. There was such a wealth of information that you shared with us today, and I look forward to having you back for part two.
Yeah,